Bolton Ink Effect.
My guest today is Brad Hook, author, speaker, and founder who spent over 2 decades studying how minds work. From building digital platforms in the early internet era to co-founding resilience and well-being programs used by half of Australia's top 10 companies to launching the Values Institute, now used by 50,000 people in 114 countries, Brad's new book, Start With Values, just went global with Penguin Random House. This is a wide-ranging conversation about his early journey, how he got to where he got to today. This is a fascinating conversation about a man on a journey to understand himself and impart that knowledge onto other people. He's just launched Flame, which is a new framework for human capacity in a changing world. Without further ado, this is Brad Hook.
Can I ask you a question?
The Bolton Ink Effect.
Welcome back to another edition of the Bolton Ink Effect podcast. And today is a particularly nerve-wracking day for me because I have probably the most famous podcast guest in the studio with me, none other than Brad Hook. Brad, thank you so much for joining me today.
Man. Nice to be here.
It's a bit surreal to have you here because nearly 7 years ago, I reached out to you because you were a fellow South African, and I had Bridge and Miss 15 had recently come over from South Africa, and you graciously invited us over for a meal at your place. That was a long time ago.
That was a long time.
And a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. But I wanted to start and say, when last did you actually go and have a proper good surf?
Oh, that's a good question. It's been a while. And this year has been a particularly bad one for surf. So I could surf on a longboard, I suppose, which is what most people do around here. But I'm still attached to this vision of myself as a shortboarder, the identity of I like high performance surfing, I like those kinds of waves. So this year has been the least I've surfed in a long time, which is kind of sad. I need to turn that around. I will turn that around as soon as we get another swell, for sure.
Yeah, it's been a bit flat at the moment, and in beautiful winter days, obviously with winter season here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
But you originally came from Durban, which is,
Yes.
I mean, that was your sort of foundation in surfing.
It was.
Did you grow up surfing? Did someone put you into it? Because I know you use surfing as a metaphor for life, or you did. And it's followed you through your life.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what it means for you to be a surfer or to have that as background. And the reason I ask that is because I grew up in Johannesburg, which is landlocked.
Yes.
So we were so far away from any water, and I don't really have a particular... I've never surfed, let's put it that way. Maybe I should start. I don't know if an old dog can learn new tricks.
Definitely.
But tell us what it's like to be a surfer and use that as a metaphor in life. And we'll unpack it a little bit later.
Yeah. So I started surfing when I was about 6 years old. My uncle pushed me onto a wave. I was actually on a bodyboard, not a surfboard. And I don't know how or why, but I stood up. And my uncle was looking at me going, well, wow, that's way cooler than I thought it was going to be. You stood up on the bodyboard. He said, you should probably figure out surfing. So I begged my mum. She told me that if I did well in my exams, by this point I was probably about 8, I could get a surfboard. And eventually I got one. So, I mean, it was amazing. I surprised myself that I actually did well in the exams. But, you know, a little bit of effort. And so then I started surfing, and it was just this place of relief. It was just this place of calm. And, you know, my upbringing was quite tumultuous. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of, it was quite a stressful time, especially with my mum and my stepdad. So finding this place where I could just paddle out and learn some new skills, practice, but every now and then you just catch a wave and you just fly along it. And I'll never forget the first time I got a really good wave, and there was just this, it was morning sunlight coming through the ocean on this board, and I was going along and I realized I'm riding along a wave. And that was the moment. And from then I was hooked. I just had to keep going. It was just the best thing in the world.
I love the term hooked. fin and being hooked, but I can imagine what that must feel like in terms of, I ride bikes. That's my nemesis or my way of connecting back to myself. And the only thing that I can connect to with what you were talking about riding that wave is being in the present moment.
Exactly.
Everything else has to fall away because you have to focus on what you are doing, and then the focus becomes unconscious.
Yeah.
And you're just present.
Yes.
Nothing else matters.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And I think it's so important in this day and age, and we'll get to that in a second, to remember those times where we played.
Yeah.
That sense of play, because that's what it was, wasn't it? When I started to learn to ride a bike, I mean, the minute I felt that exact same feeling of just no one holding me, pushing me down the road, and my mom freaking out that I don't fall and graze my knees, and that just sense of freedom.
Yeah.
And being in the present moment is something that you cannot, well, it lives with you because you remember your first time, don't you?
It's always there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned growing up, you're the oldest of 4?
Oldest of one sister from the same mum and dad, and then 3 half brothers and sisters.
Did they surf at all?
No, I'm the only one.
You're the only one who actually followed that path.
Yeah.
Okay.
My stepfather was a surfer, and even though we didn't get along, there were these surfboards at home.
So that was the connector.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I couldn't resist. I had caught the bug early on, and he had all of these old surfer and surfing magazines. They're 2 types of magazines from the US, and I would just read them, devour them, and I learned all about the history of surfing in Australia and all these places around the world, and it just sparked this idea of travel.
Yeah, well, that's another whole topic, because you left. Obviously, you grew up and did what you had to do. What made you leave South Africa? What was, because I know you followed, photography and journalism to the UK, but those early days of actually looking at those magazines, did that spark a flame to actually?
Definitely. And my uncle, he did something interesting. Back then, South Africans couldn't travel that easily in the 90s. And he went overseas. He worked in a fish factory in Iceland. I mean, random. But they needed workers. So he was there, and then he went to the US and did a road trip, and then he went to England. And it opened up my eyes to, wow, people can actually leave and do interesting things. So that was one aspect. The other was the surf magazines, like pictures of Indonesia.
Absolutely, the absolute
California.
yeah,
Like,
idyllic lifestyle.
What is this? I mean, not to say that Durban had pretty good waves for a surfer. You could easily just settle there, and it is what it is. But I just had this yearning for new places. My grandfather traveled too, even during apartheid. He worked for a retail store, and he would have to travel to Japan and source the next range of electronics or whatever it might be. So there were these little examples that you could travel, and that there was a big world out there, and that really helped. And then I was going on a bit of a, I suppose it was a bit of a bad path, and had a big car accident, and I decided something needed to change.
That's in South Africa?
In South Africa. So I had been studying photography. I had started getting published in some surf magazines and newspapers. I just sold everything and bought a one-way ticket and went to the UK. Because I knew I needed a change, otherwise I was going to get myself into more trouble.
Just a question on the relationship with your stepdad. Yeah. Was there anything else that you remember from those early days that he taught you, even though you didn't have the best relationship with you, and surfing was the conduit to have that sort of relationship? Was there anything that he imparted on you that you remember that stuck with you?
He was into martial arts. He was a lifeguard. That's what his job was. And then he moved to the Navy. He was very, he had very strong mood swings, especially, it was interesting, at certain times of year, like around Christmas, he would often go crazy, and then he would drink heavily, and then things would fall apart pretty fast. So he had some traumas, unresolved things going on in his own life. Of course, me as a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old, you've got no idea that someone's carrying their own baggage. In retrospect, I do. I understand much more clearly now. But so there was that side of him which you would find dangerous, but I also, he would just do things. Like he would go surfing, he was doing his martial arts training. I think that kind of stuff I quite admired in a way. Certainly the fact that he would just do things without fear. It was the lack of fear that I noticed.
It's a great role model to have in that regard, to be able to say, just do things.
Just do it.
With all due respect to my father, who was still alive, and I have a very good relation. Well, I had a very good relationship with him. Never rocked the boat. Was just a rock. It was just there. There was clothes on my back. There was food on the table.
100%.
Just stay the course. But I wish that he'd pushed more or challenged me or did things. It's quite interesting, these different stories that we speak about in our upbringing, and how we look up to our father figures and our mother figures.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we digress. So you buy a one-way ticket to the UK. You get to the UK. You do what you're going to do at the UK, and you also then land up getting quite sick on some of your travels.
Yeah.
Which, dare I say it, is also a watershed moment.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, you were fighting off a parasite.
Yes.
Please tell us about that, because that leads us to an interesting change in your way of life.
Yeah, for sure. So there was quite a lot of dots that connected before I eventually made it to the Himalayas. So I'd lived in the UK for about 5 years, moved to Australia. Australia was wonderful, surfing again. It was great. Can't do too much surfing in the UK.
No,
well, I did quite a lot, but it's...
Thick wetsuit.
Yeah, and crunching across ice is not that much fun. No. But after living in Australia for about a decade, I decided, I got my Australian passport. I'd had a business. I'd burnt myself out. I was in a bit of a predicament. I just felt like I need to change things. In fact, I wanted to understand how some people achieve sustainable performance in their lives. So I thought, well, I love photography. I love writing. I've had this digital agency for many years. I'm just going to do something different. And I bought a one-way ticket. I went to India for some time, documented surfing in India. What an adventure. And then made my way to Nepal because I wanted to go to the Himalayas and interview monks. And so I got there, and it was just really peaceful. I found it was such a tranquil place. I was rewiring my brain on these adventures.
So how old would you have been then?
I would have been about 31.
Okay.
Yeah, 30, right. Maybe 31, 32. And being up in the Himalayas is just unbelievable. I moved to a town, I moved from Kathmandu to a town called Pokhara, and there's a lake, and out of your window in your room, there's just these snow-capped peaks, and it's the Himalayas, and they look close, but they're so far away.
But they're massive.
Unbelievable. Like you've never, it
has to be seen.
It has to be seen. So a friend of mine called me, and he said, he was having a bit of a crisis, and he said, can I come visit you? So I said, yeah, absolutely. So he joined me. I met him in Kathmandu. We got the bus, and the bus stops along the way at little roadside cafes. So we sit down, we have a meal. I grab the water that's on the table, have a big drink, and then we stand up to leave, and I say, oh, you forgot your water. And he's like, oh no, that's the table water. And then I asked the waiter, and they said, oh no, that's from the river. We just put it there to wash your hands. And I thought, oh no, I just drank river water. And that's a big no-no in these places. Well, anywhere nowadays, which is sad, but it is what it is. So my friend said, just drink a lot of Coke. That should kill anything.
But in that moment, was there like a little bit of fear, or did you kind of not think about it because you were fairly resilient and young and...
A little bit, because you really don't want to get sick.
No, of course.
And we were planning on going hiking, trekking.
Yeah, especially being very far away from water and being inland.
Yeah. Okay. And by this point in the adventure, I think I'd given up on things like travel insurance. I was like, who cares?
As you do.
I was on a mission. and so it only hit about a month later.
Wow. Okay.
So we trek the Himalayas, we had a whole lot of fun together. He left, and then I started to get these stomach pains, and it was like really intense. Nothing seemed to work. Eventually went back to Kathmandu, and they gave me these giant yellow tablets that had all kinds of warnings on them, like probably carcinogenic. I'm about to take this thing. Like, what is it? Anyway, I was forced to spend about a month or two, maybe even longer, 2 months in Kathmandu. Now, once you've walked around and you've seen the old town, there's not that much to do there. I'd visited the temples, I'd done that kind of stuff. And so I decided, I was just having nothing to do creates an opportunity for play and creativity. Space. Because without the, actually creating the space, we'll just always keep ourselves busy. That's it. So we'll always just find things to do, fill the space, stress as a habit. And now I was forced to do nothing for a while, and I didn't feel like walking around. I felt quite sick. So I just started writing, and I've always written. I've got a box full of notebooks from my travels, and I started writing a book. And that was the genesis of what would become Surfing Life Waves, my first book. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, just
so
writing.
That illness led to you writing your first book.
Exactly.
In a way. So
yeah.
The reframe could be taken any way, either as negative or a positive.
Yeah.
So you've written quite extensively.
Yeah.
You've written a lot. The one interesting book that I found, which was Tantric Mountain, which is completely different to any of your other books that you have written.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a little bit of light about that and the process of actually being able to write something which is, as I understand it, it's a dark psychological thriller about paranoia, deceit, conspiracy, set around a volcano in Tenerife.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So fiction has always been my first love.
Okay.
That's what I see myself doing later, once I'm finished doing all of the other stuff that we can talk about.
On this journey.
Yeah. I've written another fiction novel since then. I'm in the edit phase of it now. I think it probably has legs. Tantric Mountain, so I was living in Tenerife at the time. I traveled there. I met my future partner. We had met in Bali, and then we connected again. She was based in Russia. Anyway, so her Schengen visa expired. She went back to Russia. And I had this time. Again. Yeah. And I decided, one day I just had this idea. So I was walking across the town square in this small town called El Medano. It's on the south coast of Tenerife. It's a locals town. There's no tourists go there. It's beautiful. It's quite a popular kite surfing and windsurfing spot. So some people do go there for that specifically. And it's got this red volcanic mountain at one end of it. It's beautiful. So one day I came back from a run and I was looking up at the window of my flat, my apartment, and I thought, imagine if you got home and there was someone else in there, but they knew you. So you'd basically jumped timeline. And this turned into a whole story. And I thought, I've got to write this down. So I just wrote it down, and then over the next couple of years, just turned it into a full-length book. However, and published it, but it was just probably too weird. So sometimes creative people intentionally sabotage themselves in order to avoid criticism. So I made it so much of a psychological thriller that no one could understand it. There are like 7 characters all speaking from first person perspective. Like, you needed a lot of work to get through it. I've subsequently learned that you've got to make a reader's attention is precious. So don't just write something for you, write something for them, so that it's easy enough for them to follow along. So it's something I probably will rewrite that book at some point, but it is a cool story. I mean, it's this guy, he gets home and there's a girl there who seems to love him and know him, and he's never met her before, and he's really confused, but then she's really attractive. So he's like, well, maybe I'll just go along with this anyway. But then he starts noticing some strange things going on. You're never quite sure whether it's him and he's just, having some kind of meltdown, or if he actually is the subject of some grand conspiracy. And it's got a pretty cool ending as well. So I took it off Amazon because it was maybe not on brand for Brad Hook, the research, the self-help guru.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And I'm going to have to read it sometime because it's so...
Okay, I've got a print copy for you.
Thank you. I'll hold you to that.
Yeah.
It's so different to how the public know you
Yeah.
at the moment. You're a builder. And I don't mean builder in terms of brick and mortar.
Yeah.
You have built companies, you've built software, you've done a hell of a lot, Brad. And it's quite inspirational, actually. I look at how much you've done, the little bit of research that I did do, and I'm like, wow, you've managed to fit a lot of life into your life. And then when you do get the gaps, you seem to create these wonderful books or apps or software or businesses, which is incredible. There's a self-awareness piece there that I would like to talk about in terms of, and we could go into the different businesses you built, but that's not really what I'm after. What I'm after is how you, first of all, not find the time, but do that. I mean, it's obviously a passion, because I get the sense that there's an unearthing of who Brad is. And through every iteration and through every business built, you learn a little bit more about you, which brings us right to 2026, which I'm not there yet. But in those times that you've built and you've burnt out and you've thrived and you've made the money and you've gone up and down, what are some of the highlights? What are some of the biggest learnings that you've learned through building those companies and those software apps and applications?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the drive for it comes from, I did feel like I wasted a lot of time in my life, especially in my 20s. I feel like I just didn't do as much as I would have liked.
But did you? Think about it.
Yeah. It's, and I've learned to appreciate the young version of myself. I used to resent him a little bit and be like, man, you could have achieved so much more.
I feel the same now. So there's a little bit of a therapy session here going both ways, because I look back at my 20s and go, what the hell did you do?
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
Yeah.
And
wasted time.
Would I be here today if I'd worked harder then? And at the same time, I have to love that person for 40 years, because that's the journey that I'm on.
Totally. Exactly.
As the journey that you're on.
Yeah, no, exactly. And a lot of that time wasn't wasted because I was following curiosity. I mean, I taught myself to code.
Wow, okay.
So it was pure curiosity and this idea that, wow, coding will allow me to build things which will allow me to write. So that was always the logic, was build stuff to create space so I can do the thing that I love doing. And along the way, some of what I built actually worked, which was really crazy. I mean, I built this carbon offsetting platform. I just had this idea, but it was so far ahead of its time. It was in the mid-2000s. And I'd heard about carbon being an issue and carbon footprints. And I've always cared about nature. Like, I really, if I could dedicate the rest of my life to cleaning the ocean, who knows? There's still time. So
there's still time.
Yeah. And but then starting to tinker and build things, and this carbon offsetting platform, suddenly I had clients and I was going, oh, okay. And what we were doing is I created a little algorithm, like how much carbon does a web server emit?
Right.
And people could come online, figure out how much carbon their website was generating, and then I made a deal with New South Wales forestries, and they're planting trees to capture carbon. So it was like this cool thing.
Complete loop.
But then I got investors who bought in, they purchased, I was clueless when it came to the commercial side of things. So they said, we'll give you $5,000 and can we have a 66% share in the business? I was like, $5,000? Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go.
Yeah, so I've made it big time. I've got investors now in my startup. And then, they just wanted to make it their business. So it just changed. They're telling me, like, have a haircut and this and that. And I was like, well, no, this is, I'm running it how I do. Anyway, so that thing kind of fizzled out. Unfortunately, it was before its time. Who knows? I might bring it back one day. But so the coding and that curiosity has always been bubbling under the surface.
And I'm not a coder at all.
Yeah.
Was there a specific code that you found? Because as I understand, coding is just a language that you have to learn in order to build things, ones and zeros. Was there a specific language model that you, funny I use that term, that you enjoyed, that you found?
Yeah, well, in the beginning, it was about 1999. I was in London and I had discovered the internet and I thought, this thing is pretty cool.
Right time, right place as well.
Yeah, for sure. So in fact, it would have been 97, 98. I discovered the internet at work. There was a web browser on one of the computers and I just thought, I need one of these. Okay, so my next question was, how do people make these things?
Yeah.
And I found a bookstore in London called Learn HTML in a Weekend or something. So I took it home, devoured it. I was really, I didn't do very well at maths at school because my teachers told me I was bad at maths.
Wow.
So when that's reinforced, you give up. It's learned helplessness. I was like, well, I'm not good at maths, so there's no point even trying. And then I found coding so easy. But it's a language. So maybe it's because it's a language, but you've got to get the syntax right. Like one misplaced full stop or bracket and the whole thing breaks. So it taught me attention to detail. And so I started making websites. And then at work, someone said, you can do that? I was like, yeah. I just made a little intranet for Lloyd's of London. And they were going, wow, that's cool.
Just a little intranet.
Yeah, I was like, well, it's just a way that we can all find files easily and we can share information. Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. So that gave me a new lease on life because suddenly I was valuable and my skills were valuable. And then that led to establishing a web agency when I eventually moved to Australia. It was a digital brand and storytelling agency because I suppose I've always had the love of telling a story. Like how can a business tell its story? So it was more than just I design websites. It was like, how can I help you tell your story best?
Okay, you're a wonderful storyteller, and even just sitting here listening to you, you weave story into your experiences, which I really appreciate. So thank you very much for sharing that. How the hell did you land up in New Zealand?
Oh yeah, so that's another story. So I was in Australia. I got into the self-development world. Yep. I was working with one client in particular. We partnered. It's called Life by Design. And we built some amazing platforms. That was really my entry point into self-development, positive psychology, neuroscience, workplace culture, all of these topics that I'd never even considered were real. Although I had always been interested, I'd read books like The Buddha's Brain and books that help you to try and make sense of what's going on in your mind. Yeah. And that was part of my travels, was to try and unpack, why do we do what we do? What is this moment, the present moment? And how can I shape what I'm thinking in this moment in order to do what matters? Early seeds were being sown. So anyway, I went and traveled, and on my trip, I ended up in Indonesia. I always went back to Bali. So no matter where I went in the world, that was my home base.
Okay.
And it always has been my happy place. It's changed a lot in the years. When I first went there in the very early 2000s, Kuta was a little village, and you would ride a scooter and go surfing. And there was not that many people around. It was amazing. But now it's very different. It's like the Australia's Gold Coast in Indonesia. Okay. But in Bali, I met my future partner, whose name is Jen, and she's Russian. And then we connected again in Tenerife, and she went back to Russia and found out that she was pregnant. And so a decision needed to be made. And I remember running up the volcano in El Medano, and I had found this little spot. It was precarious. I mean, you have to walk to the edge, and then there's a tiny little ledge, but I found a cave. And so I used to go to this cave in the evenings and watch the sunset and meditate. Meditation was something I'd kind of learned in Nepal. It's not, I could not claim to be a master meditator, but I've played around with it a lot. And so I went up there and I sat in the cave, and the sun was pouring down upon me, and it was beautiful. And I just decided, okay, let's do this. So we couldn't go to Australia because the visa processing time was 12 months, but we could come to New Zealand.
Okay.
And bring your partner. So we came here. I got work. I worked with the Heart Foundation for a while, and then with the Resilience Institute. We've never quite made it back to Australia or anywhere else, to be honest. So New Zealand ended up being the new home base.
And that's kind of where our story began, obviously in New Zealand, where you were at the Resilience Institute, which you helped co-found and for a time was CEO. And that was a time where you actually got into almost public facing now with organizations, which brought you into training And I just find it fascinating, Brad, that all these little stories and little adventures have brought you to a place to where you are now based on lived experience. You've done a lot to get to where you've got to, okay? And now there's a time where there's a shift happening again. You're starting another business, not starting another business, it's always been there. You have a very successful podcast, which has allowed you to tap into lots of minds and lots of experiences with experts in their field, which you've absorbed, and now you're creating something. Tell us about it. It's called The Flame. What is it? It's The Flame, or is it I know it's, yeah.
Flame is the name. So it all started, the name comes from an adventure. I was in Vietnam, and I documented many of these adventures for travel magazines. Travel magazines would buy these. Some, I don't know how and why. I mean, obviously they were interesting enough. And so I got there and I interviewed Kung Fu masters, and in one of the dojos, one of the Kung Fu masters said something I'll never forget. I mean, he was one of the oldest Kung Fu masters in Vietnam. He was about 84. His name was Master Huang. And he said to me at the end of this amazing interview, he said, I always ask the question, which is, do you have any words of wisdom I can share with people? And he said, always carry a small flame, because a small flame can burn down an entire jungle. And I thought about this idea of a small flame that we carry with us over the course of our life, something that we can rely on in times of challenge, something that we can nurture by adding new tools to our toolkit, and something we can use to illuminate the path for others. And so I thought, what are the elements of that flame? And the next 15 years or so was dedicated to really discovering what enables us to burn bright, not out. And the Resilience Institute was an important part of that, because I learned about the science of resilience and how the nervous system works. But I suspected that there might be more, because you can be highly resilient but still not fulfilled. So what else was out there? And that led me to start thinking about core values, which I wrote a book about purpose, and many other related fields, belonging, being part of a group that cares about you. Resilience can feel quite lonely. I've been lonely and resilient. But when you feel a sense of psychological safety and belonging, your resilience increases. So that's an important dimension. But yeah, so the seeds of flame have been sown for a long time. And now that's my flagship program. I've been running it around New Zealand and internationally, actually, for quite a few different clients. People are finding me online, and it's really nice. I talk about how to shift your state, how to change your story, and how to take action. Because a lot of people, we're seeing there's a crisis of loneliness. That's crazy when we live in this hyper-connected world, and yet people are lonelier than ever. There's a burnout epidemic. People are just burning out. 1 in 4 people is burnt out. That's according to some recent research.
Let's talk about that for a second, though, because one of the episodes that you speak about in this age of AI, which is the buzzword, has been a buzzword, is the buzzword, and will change our lives. Is changing and will change, I believe, fundamentally how society actually functions. What that looks like, I don't know, but I know it's going to happen. But you talk about AI as an exocortex, because it's a driver of burnout, because it allows you to become that much more efficient. But in my experience, it's like shiny object syndrome. There's all these things, like you go down this rabbit hole and you go down that rabbit hole, and I think to myself, what have I actually done? How has it actually made me more efficient? Now, I am not in the situation where I work for a big corporate or a corporation. I'm an entrepreneur and a sole entrepreneur and a freelancer, if you will. So there are certain things that it's definitely helped me with. But can you extrapolate that a little bit more about this idea of an exocortex, because it is like, and there's even there's talk about like your second brain, basically, which you can feed into it, which just helps with day-to-day tasks. And I would assume or assert that would allow us to have more time to ourselves, to be more present. But do you think this is just a learning curve that we have to go through in order to get to the next level or level up?
What we practice is what we become. So if I've been practicing busyness for years, just having access to super intelligence is not going to change my behavior.
No, not at all.
In fact, now that I've got this extra capability, it's likely that I'll just be running ChatGPT here and Claude here, and I'll have Grok there generating a video, and I'll just be jumping and actually multitasking even more. Now, we know that multitasking
Sucks the bandwidth.
100%. Like if I'm working on 5 tasks simultaneously, I lose 80% of my time to context switching, just jumping. Now I've got like 5 threads running in Claude, 2 in Claude Code, 1 over here in ChatGPT, and I'm more fried than ever before. They call it AI brain fry. In fact, some recent research showed that on average, our attention spans have shrunk to 47 seconds. So we are training ourselves for short burst focus, hypervigilance. It's not good for us.
No.
It doesn't feel good. However, as an exocortex, if you think of AI as extended cognition, so it's thinking outside of our body. We've had this for a long time. I mean, people used to have that Rolodex on their desk.
Sure.
That's extended cognition.
Literally, just as analog.
Yeah, it's just, I don't have to remember everything.
It's there.
Because I've got a tool, a system. Yeah. Now, if you use it like that, and remember, it doesn't need to sleep, although you may run out of tokens and then have to upgrade, but it doesn't need to sleep, whereas you do.
Yes.
The same timeless principles matter. So, and because knowledge is now abundant, like you can get an answer to anything, it becomes, how do I ask a better question? And how do I use it wisely and intentionally? Because I've been lost down rabbit holes on AI, and for not just little ones, like big ones. And at the end of it, you ask, well, do I feel more fulfilled as a result? That's always my litmus test. Like, did that bring me fulfillment? Did it enrich me in any way? Did it make me better in any way? And you go, not really. Whereas if you use it very deliberately, like Claude Code, superpower, if you want to build something and you can connect it to a web server, I now have the capability, and I know you do this as well, I can speak to my Claude LLM and build things. Now we're getting interesting.
So, in my learning and understanding of AI, because the one thing that you and I, we're a similar age, with what they call Generation X, which I find, obviously because I'm in it, it's the best generation to be.
At least we're not boomers.
No, exactly. We're not boomers, and we're not the millennials.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting is that we've got one foot in analog.
Yeah.
We grew up, no AI, no cell phones, none of the digital complexities that we have today. Yeah. And yet we are here today with AI.
Yeah.
And we can straddle both worlds. So we know what it was like before.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, it's not about being left behind, because I won't be left behind, because my curiosity allows me to be able to go, I'll figure this out.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you see it going, Brad? Because it is here. And the other part to this, which I'm keen to get your insight on, is how do we pull people along that are maybe our age or older for them to see the benefit in it? And not get this kind of like, because you're going to get the AI cohort that are going to be anti-AI. It has to happen.
It has to happen.
It has to happen, because you can't please everyone.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a time and space where in real life, IRL is going to be super important. And that's what I find so fascinating, what you're building in terms of, and we'll get into it in a minute, about the in-person connections are going to be, dare I say it, life-saving.
Yeah, it's true.
Versus the Zoom meetings and calls, which are warranted, but like, I'm done. There's a disconnection there. Yeah. Even though you feel connected, you're not connected, because I can't see your eyes, I can't see your cheek movements, the subtle skin changes, those little nuances, those little touch points which allow me to react and to move and ask hopefully better questions. But you understand what I'm saying.
Totally, yeah.
And get into rapport with someone in real life.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? How can we help? Like, where do you see it going?
There's definitely resistance, and resistance is coming in surprising places. I see schools are pushing back. Teachers are teaching kids AI is evil. It's bad.
I don't know if that's such a good idea, though.
No, I don't think so either, especially if they are going to have to go and use it, potentially. If you're not using it, hopefully in an intentional way, you might get left behind, put it that way. Now, there's many schools of thought.
Yeah, sure. And it's a wide topic.
There are doomers, AI doomers, like it's going to take over and it's going to realize quite quickly that we are the problem and get rid of us. I recently wrote an open letter to Superintelligence on my Values Institute website that just states, here's human values, because we talk a lot about AI alignment. Is it aligned with humans? My question is, do we even know what we're aligned on?
Yeah.
Who are we as a species?
I have to say this, because this was something that I learned a couple of years ago with one of the podcasts that I was filming and recording. And I can't remember the lady's name, with all due respect, but she said, treat the AI like you would like to be treated.
Yeah.
Say please. Say thank you. It's learning all the time.
Yeah.
So the dystopian aspect, or the AI doomers, I get it. In terms of that, if they're going to treat AI like that, they're just going to get it straight back at you.
Yeah.
And ironically, it almost feels like this grey matter that is between our earlobes, we are just recreating that. We're trying on some level to recreate what is up here, to try and understand it. If we ever understand it, I don't know if we will. And you mentioned earlier, we only have, and I stand to be corrected on this, let's just say we've got 32 bits of information for me to be able to do something. In other words, for you to be able to understand me and vice versa, I need to take a breath in. That breath has to get into my lungs, then it has to go through my vocal cords. My vocal cords have to contract or decontract to make vocal sound. They need to be emitted out of my mouth. They need to travel through the space. They need to go into your earlobes. They then need to be interpreted by your brain through the language that I'm using in order for you to make sense. And that happens fairly quickly. To your point about where we used to be able to code and type, or type an email or a newsletter, it's quite slow, the mechanics of it. Now we've got to the point where we're going to be talking, which, there's many apps for that, which halves the time. The LLMs can make sense of your garbage and put it into some sort of structure. To the extreme of that is now where we become augmented intelligence, whether that's a chip or whatever. And there will be that path that you either go down or you stay purely human. My take on that, for me personally, is to remember my humanity and to stay human.
Analog.
I know this has been recorded, but I hope I stay that way. I really do hope that there's some aspect of me that can stay and remember my humility and remember my humanity. And you mentioned the flame. I'm going to touch on that because I want to move into, there's so much, Brad. The flame for me is something that which comes back to that loneliness aspect that you were talking about. My journey through immigration has been fraught with ups and downs, but it's been a very lonely journey, and I've had my family, and that has aligned to my values. I realized very clearly where my values lie, because in certain aspects I'm weak, but my family, it's my core reason for living. And if you had a Venn diagram, and this is stolen from someone else, but it's a brilliant illustration. If you had a Venn diagram with Elon Musk, for example, who is brilliant, he's going to take us to Mars. So in that aspect, he's super intelligent and brilliant, and I fall flat. But if you take my Venn diagram of my family values versus his, I am way ahead of him. So all these different aspects, and the flame that I emit inside comes from a men's group called Bros. BROS.NZ, and they literally get back to that humanity piece about remember who you are, stand up for what you are, and they call about it chop wood, carry water, and remember that flame inside and what a flame can do. It can be a roaring forest fire, or it can be a source of comfort and a source of resilience in those times. All of that, coming to the point of like we're living our individual lives, and there is an epidemic of loneliness, and you are trying, your journey has almost led you to bring people together now. There's a couple of questions. One, in your workshops, in your time that you've spent in many, many organizations, have there been sort of overarching highlights or overarching realizations for you about what people actually need? And that will bring me into, we'll talk about flame in a second.
Definitely. People are stressed. They are not quite sure what that means, except that they've got this vague sense of feeling uneasy and distressed.
Something's not right.
Something's not quite right. They feel disconnected from what matters, asking the question, why? Why am I doing this? Especially as you nudge toward middle age, you start asking those types of questions like, hold on a second, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, what is this all about? What is this journey worthwhile? People are not sleeping well. There's some real basics. People are sleeping worse than ever before, and there are some very practical things. When people learn this, it's like, oh, why didn't I try this sooner?
And it's so simple.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
And then some cognitive tools, things that you can do to shift the story that you tell yourself, because we can get quite embedded and comfortable in certain stories about who we are, what the world's all about, and we lose contact with reality. The brain is a prediction engine.
That's what I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned that the brain is a prediction.
Brain is a prediction engine. And
Just wants to keep you alive.
it wants to keep you alive. So the brain has never experienced reality. It's in a black box, the skull. And it receives input from outside, which is called exteroception. It receives input from inside. So it always looks to our internal state to check what's going on there, because that gives it a clue of how I am in the context of the world. And then it cross-references with our priors, which are beliefs, expectations, our values, or everything that we've learnt and done. So there's this constant dynamic interplay between what's arriving through our sensory surfaces, what the brain sees within ourselves, and what's happened before. And we can act in coherence, which is when our thoughts and our actions are in alignment with what's going on outside. There's low prediction error, things are going quite well. Or sometimes we experience high prediction error. So the predictions are running. There's also this weighting system. So a prediction is weighted and the brain decides, oh, that's the most likely one, so let's do that. But it pre-allocates stress hormones, it pre-allocates energy.
Fascinating.
So the brain is saying, okay, you've got this courageous conversation that you need to have with someone. It might not go that well, so let's pre-allocate stress hormones. Now I walk in already in fight flight.
Yeah.
Whereas, and the brain is looking to the body going, uh-oh, you're in this state of high arousal. This is probably going to go badly. And
Told the story already.
Exactly.
Predicted it.
It's almost like the brain is a forecaster. It's like, imagine if the weather forecast actually influenced the weather.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what our brain is doing.
Yeah. So I understand it, and I've watched you work, and I've seen the simplicity of, and how simple it can actually be, and to circumnavigate that and to stop that. And that is just simply through breathing.
Well,
it's one of them.
That's one of them.
It's one of them. I know that. But it's a very simple, that people seem to have forgotten.
Well, you can always regain coherence through breath work, because you start breathing, you create some order. If your breathing is haphazard, what signal is it giving to the body? It's giving the signal of stress, something's wrong. So slow things down. Coherent breathing is in for 4, out for 6. It activates the vagus nerve, which is a two-way information superhighway. The brain takes notice and goes, oh, the body is calm. Maybe the situation isn't so stressful, restores blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, and I'm back in the room. Like, that's a simple hack, but there are many other pattern interrupts just to check. I mean, gratitude is one. Simply paying attention to what's gone well. It forces the brain out of this stressed state and asks it to go hunt the environment. Did anything go well? Am I grateful for anything? And well, studies show that even improves sleep quality. Okay. But then you've got sleep and all of these other capacities. Reflection, just writing down, journaling is a powerful practice. They find that leaders who regularly pause and reflect are 23% higher performers. There's so many things, and most of it is it comes from ancient wisdom. You know, the Stoics told us to focus on what we can control, and then cognitive behavioral therapy said, actually, you know what we should do? We should focus on what we can control, and it gives us a sense of agency.
Different wrapper. Yeah.
So it's shift your state. Like, are you in a state of distress? Calm it down with breathing. That's step one. Get a good night's sleep. That'll enable you to have more capacity for whatever matters the next day. And then ask, what's the story I'm telling myself? Can I create a pattern interrupt? Can I, maybe for some people it's learning meditation, because meditation enables you to watch the prediction engine. You're seeing the brain throwing out these crazy predictions, and you're like, that's pretty noisy in here. Yeah. And that's always what's happening.
Do you have a meditation practice? Or do you use it in any way?
Yeah, I mean, some people, there was a time when I used it like vitamins. It was every day. Now I'm more likely to use it as kind of aspirin. Things are busy. I notice my mind running wild, and it's time to tame the elephant. So I'll use the tools that are in the toolkit. And of course, I use it in workshops a lot. So that's forced practice. Which is nice, but I'm leading the room as well. And then I've got some other tools. Surfing is one, walking in nature. The Japanese have talked about Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, for a long time. Go into a natural environment. Actually, the phenomenon of walking through a forest environment is called soft fascination. I think it would be a great band name, by the way. Someone told me it sounds creepy, but so you walk in nature and just allow your attention to drift. It's so good for us.
I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Isn't it ridiculous that you need a scientific study in order to...
But people need the scientific backed up scientific notions to say, okay, if science says it's right, it must be good for me.
Exactly.
So it's almost like we have to travel back to what it's like just to be human.
Exactly.
Okay. Your last book that you wrote, which is leading me into the final kind of section of this, because there's so much that we could go down, Brad, but I'm going to try and land this plane. Is Start with Values, which was published last year, 2025. How to build a life with meaning and purpose. So in the one line, basically, is the one line sort of thesis is most people chase goals, habits, and success without ever defining what actually matters to them. So they drift or burn out. And your argument is that values, not goals, is the real kind of operating system for a good life, because if you can get clear of them first, then sort of everything downstream, the decisions you make, the resilience, the relationships, kind of gets easier.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful reframe to the big marketing engine, which was set goals. You must have set goals. But if you don't know where they need to go or what they're based on, dare I say it, you won't necessarily get there. So and then I've got another question for you about that. But just tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, goals and hustle culture and productivity without meaning, like what's the point? You might achieve the goal. I've met many people who achieved every goal they set, and they were incredibly depressed. They got there and they were like, but why? I was just on this, it was goal achievement. I got addicted to the dopamine, the rush of pursuit. That's what they got addicted to. Yeah. But then you get to a certain point and no amount of money answers that question. Like, why? What's important to me? So I was involved in a study at Resilience Institute where we found that in 2023, the number one skill shared by the most resilient people was fulfillment. So that made me wonder, so what are the keys to fulfillment? Yeah. Like if these really resilient people are practicing fulfillment, what does that actually mean? And I went down the values rabbit hole. And it's an area that I'd been interested in for a while, and I thought, that's it. If you act in alignment with what matters to you, you experience more fulfillment. So the next question is, well, what matters to you? And we've all got different values. Sure. So for me, if you look at the journey of my life, when I'm creative and curious, things go well. Yeah. And when there's space for that creativity and curiosity.
That space, that comes through.
And then understanding family.
Just that space piece. So would you say that's one of the values is creating space for creativity and calm?
Yeah.
Okay, for you.
For sure.
Then the other aspect on top of that would be family. I mean, you talk about the values pyramid.
Yeah.
Which I assume highlights what is actually important for you. Therefore, you can then set goals.
Absolutely. Okay. So values-based goals are really powerful because they are specific, measurable, all of that stuff. but based on what matters to you.
Yeah,
So there's a real reason why. It's like micro habits. You know, instead of just saying, okay, I've got this big goal, I'm going to get fit. It's so vague. How am I going to do that?
100%.
You say, I'm a runner, because that is an identity. It's at my core. It's based around a value of getting fit. Now, break it down into small pieces, the atomic habits approach, but start with that identity. Who is it that I'm becoming, and knowing why?
So that's another interesting point, but who am I becoming, rather than manifest these these things which become a bit nefarious.
Totally.
And it gets you hyped up and ready to go, and then day 4 and you're like, sorry, what? What was I doing?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Like, who do I want to become? How do I want to show up as a husband, a father, a creative person, whatever that looks like. But it's based on why. Why do I want to? Where?
And then using tools like visualization. That's another powerful tool that can help shape the predictions that the brain creates. Because if I visualize myself in a TED Talk and it's going really well, and it's because I want to help others on their journey of life, that's powerful. It gives you something to work towards. But if I just sit at home and think one day I want to do a TED Talk, well, many people do, but how are you bringing it to life, and why? That's the real key.
Yeah.
So being clear about your values, I say try and focus on 3. Some people get a list of 10 values, and then it's really hard to make a decision. So, which value can I use? A hierarchy of values, what's your number 1? So if there had to be a trade-off, do you choose creativity or family? And
if you had to choose one.
And if you're clear about that, there's no guilt, because a lot of people say, I want to be a high performer at work, so my value is performance, let's say, or achievement, and I also value my family. Okay, now you have to work late and you're going to miss bedtime stories. Are you going to be laying in a pool of guilt for a few days, or are you so clear that you go, well, because achievement is number 1, I don't feel guilty. My family will deal with it. This is what's important to me. Or, actually, family is number 1. I say no to that meeting and I don't feel bad. Clarity.
Stripping away, cutting back. Your Global's value report. It's interesting because there are 2 people we spoke about it. People are too burnt out and too almost overwhelmed to actually act on them.
Yeah,
Brad.
exactly.
Like it's scary, man.
Yeah,
it's an epidemic. So you've come this far, and tell us about Flame. I know that there's an exciting project happening, and there's an exciting date happening in September. Please tell us about Flame.
So Flame is the name of the program that I run. Obviously, I run it with groups, teams. But often people come to me afterwards and say, I wish that my husband could come along, or I wish that my child could come along. When do you do public events? Now, to shift from some running workplace programs to public programs, it's quite different. There's logistics. There's a whole lot of, will people even come? In a workplace, the boss basically says, you're going to be in this workshop at 2 p.m. and then I turn up and I've got a captive audience. But a public event is different. But I thought, why wouldn't I give people the opportunity to come along, learn some new things? I ran a version of it last year and about 65 people came with not much marketing. So this is not a money-making venture. What I want to do is create a space where people come together and they learn some new tools and they feel this in-person IRL, like this is what it's like to be together with no technoference. Like we're not being bombarded by information. We come in and we have some storytelling and you have a conversation with the person next to you and we figure out some new skills and how I might actually use them and we reconnect with what matters most. So I've booked a theatre for September and I plan to do many more and just turn it into a bit of a roadshow and take it around. People ask, is it like Tony Robbins, or is it like
come and find out,
Jordan Peterson, or is it like, it's probably a little bit of all of those things.
But it's also a combination of your story, Brad.
Totally.
And I think you need to acknowledge that. I think there's been a journey here, and sitting on this side of the table, it's your lived experience of saying, I want to share a bit of my story, and I know how to do it because I've lived it.
Yeah.
So come along for the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And they become part of the story. I try and make it's not about me, it's about all of these amazing people that I've met over the course of my life and who have helped me in some way, even if it's Alan Watts, the philosopher who I loved, or it's Buddha, or Andrew Huberman, who knows. But sharing in a way that is uniquely me, because my strength is weaving scientific concepts and ancient wisdom into a story and make it fun. I think that's my real skill.
Where can people find out more information, or how do they get in touch with you? I'll put it in the show notes, but just on for the viewers out there.
So the website is called flame.live. That's the URL, and everything's on there, including I'm running a retreat. We've got a group of principals going along. So I think there are many ways that I can help people. One is like with my elite boxer who is learning flame for boxing performance, versus groups in the workplace, and then public events, sharing these tools in an accessible way, and let's see if it sparks something.
I love that.
Yeah.
Anything that I haven't asked you, or an ask of the audience, or something that you'd like to share with the audience from your perspective, please, Brad, anything at all?
There is so much. I suppose curiosity and the ability to learn seem to be the capacities that are most valuable in the future, because knowledge is on tap. Like, we can learn, you can get an answer about anything. So it's those human skills, that's being able to build a trusting relationship and actually listen to someone. Learning to be more intentional with devices, because we will get trapped in that attention economy within moments. The algorithms know us better than we know ourselves. I'm not against them, but I don't want to spend half an hour just scrolling mindlessly. So be aware of the attention economy, because it will trap you, and you will come out of it feeling like, I just lost half an hour. Be more intentional with time. It is valuable. And make space for those pursuits that you love, things that give you a little bit of joy, ideally with other humans. I saw that there's going to be a rave coming up in the Mount for over 50 or over 40s or something like that. It's called Party All Day and Go to Bed on Time kind of thing.
Bed by 10.
Bed by 10, that's the one. And do those kinds of things. Stretch yourself. Actually engage in tasks that challenge the brain, so that we keep it working, so that we don't only rely on the exocortex, we rely on the human capacities. And life can be fun. Like, don't believe everything in the news. The news it generates revenue by having eyes on screens. Yeah, do things that give you a little bit of fulfillment. And especially if you do have a family, my number one thing is just spend as much time as you can with your kids, especially. They need it more than you know.
More than you know. More than you know. Listen, on that note, and there's going to have to be a part 2, because I feel that there's
we didn't go. Yeah, there's so much more.
There's so much more.
Yeah.
I only skimmed the surface, but I'm going to leave it there for now. So thank you so much for your time, your unrenewable time in the studio. And to the viewers out there, just remember to be a little bit kinder to yourself and kinder to those around you. And we will see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, Louis. Awesome.
Can I ask you a question?
The Bolton and